Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As-salatu was-salamu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tayyibin at-tahirin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman. So, assalamu alaikum everyone. Today's reflection is called Stop Harming Yourself, and it is from chapter 10, verse 23. Now, something that we often hear these days goes something like this. How does it affect God if I don't pray or fast or cheat or lie or sleep around or drink, right? Is God so petty that he will punish me for these inconsequential things? Religion feels so restrictive. Why does it matter if I do this or that? What difference could it possibly make to God? The short answer to this question is, we're right. You're right if we're asking this question. It makes no difference to God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not diminished by our actions. He's completely independent and self-sufficient. Our obedience does not increase him, and our disobedience does not decrease him in any way. Our reflection for today explores how actually this is the wrong question to ask. Verse 23 of chapter 10 describes people caught in a storm at sea. In fear and desperation, they're scared, so they call upon Allah sincerely. They promise gratitude and obedience if only they are saved. But when the storm passes and safety returns, they revert to their old ways, transgressing, rebelling, and exceeding limits. Firstly, this shows such a relatable part of human psychology, right? Who hasn't been there? The storm at sea imagery is so powerful. When we are in crisis, whether it is a storm, external, internal, relationship-wise, our life-wise, clarity returns. We remember how dependent we are on him. We feel our vulnerability and we promise all sorts of things. But once safety returns, complacency creeps back in. And it could be as soon as the plane lands, that during the storm or during turbulence, we are so attached to him, we call on him so desperately. And as soon as the plane lands, we are, once he comes to our rescue, the storm has passed, we're back to our own selves. So in the part that we're going to be discussing today, Allah is speaking directly to all of mankind. It's not just believers, it is all of mankind. And he says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, innama baghyukum ala anfusikum. O men, your rebellion, or O people, or mankind, your rebellion is against your own souls. So this verse reframes sin entirely. We often think of sin or disobedience to God as rule breaking, right? Violation of divine authority. But this part of the verse kind of shifts our lens. Sin is not only breaking rules, it is self-harm. Allah is telling us your violations are only to your own detriment, the verse tells us. Now, there are at least two subtle aspects to this self-harm. One is the direct impact on my own soul, and the second is the indirect impact on me when I act irresponsibly. So let's first talk about the direct impact on our souls. When someone lies, for example, they fracture trust not only externally, but internally as well. Remember how we've been talking about going against our innate nature, which is programmed towards goodness. When someone indulges in envy, they poison their own peace. How many of us have experienced that, right? Holding on to resentment. When someone engages in zina, which we talked about a few days ago, they destabilize attachment systems and weaken relational trust. When someone numbs themselves through addiction, they weaken their own agency and capacity for disciplined choice. In all of these ways, and so many more, sin erodes self-respect and destabilizes emotional regulation. It weakens relationship stability. The rebellion is against ourselves. It is misalignment with our fitra. It is not who we are meant to be. It is also a misuse of our agency, of our God-given free will. It is a betrayal of our own long-term flourishing. So it is self-harm to the utmost degree. Does this make sense? Now, in Duʿāqq from Imam, from Sayyid al-Sajjād, Imam Zainul Abidin speaks so beautifully. He says, sins whose pleasures have passed and gone, but whose consequences remain. And this line particularly captures the asymmetry of sin, with so much precision. Pleasure is short, intense, often dopamine driven, right? Emotional, immediate, but so fleeting. The pleasure, one of the ways that we think about it, a moment on the lips and a lifetime on the hips, right? That's exactly what we're talking about. Consequences linger. When we overindulge in food one evening, it feels good in the moment, but the bloating, the heartburn, and the reflux last longer than the taste in mouth. So, the idea is that anything that matters takes time. Despite what life hacks IG sells us, Instagram tells us, dignity builds slowly, integrity strengthens only gradually, right? Trust develops over time. Inner stability grows through repeated alignment. So every choice that we make, every moral decision that we make is in a sense a trade. It is a spike of dopamine now, which is the immediate pleasure that we can take, or the construction of a worthwhile character, of going back to our fitra, of living how we were meant to live as a true insan, a true human being. So now let's explore the idea of self-harm from another perspective. The word the Quran uses for rebellion here is baghi. Now, most tafsirs explain this as oppression, and some of the tafsirs say that it relates to oppressing others out of greed and over-attachment to this transient world, forgetting worship and obedience that draws one closer to Allah. And Allama Tabatabai explains that the root meaning of baghi is to seek. It often comes to mean oppression because it involves seeking what belongs to others and trampling over their rights. Now, across the Quran, the term baghi carries, different shades of meaning. It involves aggression, jealousy, revolt, injustice, exceeding proper limits. It describes those who transgress boundaries, whether they're personal, social, or spiritual. And in Islamic jurisprudence, it can even refer to rebellion against a just leader. So, in every way it's used, the common thread is crossing limits that were set for balance and justice. And Allah says, when you cross those limits, you harm yourselves. Think about this. Even when you think you are doing harm to someone else, stealing from someone else, lying, plotting against someone, you are harming yourself. Now, we might think that this just means we get a sin, but it's actually much deeper than that. The thing is that we are not isolated individuals in our own little orbits floating independently. We exist within a system created by Allah. And this system of cause and effect is based on justice and balance. When boundaries are violated, whether moral, relational, economic, or environmental, the system destabilizes. Something is off. Something is not where it's meant to be. And the impact reverberates throughout the system like a ripple effect. The oppressor is part of that same system. So when it malfunctions, they too are affected. Now, have we heard that poverty impacts all of us, that we cannot behave with wanton disregard for the climate and not suffer its impact, that none of us are free until all of us are free, the butterfly effect? We may not have thought about all of these things, but they're all examples of how interconnected we are. I do not act in isolation. It is not me, myself, and I. What I do is not only my business, which is what, current world will tell us. Don't interfere in my business. Don't tell me what to do. It's between me and my God, right? But the thing is that when we act, we are impacting other human beings. We are acting within a system that we are part of. So if we look at the world today, we see that human greed has disregarded the rights of others, the rights of the earth, the rights of future generations. And what is the result? The result is global instability, environmental crisis, economic inequality, mental health epidemic, social fragmentation. We are all reeling from the impact of what people have done, even though we may not be. So, when we think of an oppressor, we think only the people that he's oppressing are impacted. No, it's the whole system, right? Including himself. Transgression does not remain contained, it reverberates. The chaos unleashed by human excess returns to the human being, even those that were not the direct cause of these phenomena. Now, just as a side note, we've all heard of the injunction of Amar bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, right? Promoting good and forbidding evil. And that is quite an unfashionable thing to do right now, right? Because we are so into minding our own business and not interfering. And when we understand how interconnected we all are, that how a single person's actions have ripple effects that actually go to the whole society, that when I am not, none of us are acting in vacuum, then it kind of begins to make sense. And inshallah, if we have the opportunity, maybe we will talk about that in a different reflection. So this verse is reminding us that when we upset the balance that Allah has set, we are harming ourselves individually and collectively, because truly we are all in this together. So let's just reflect for today. It's a very brief reflection, but it can, last us the rest of our lives, right? Where might I be rebelling against my own well-being? When I'm doing things which I think are just my business, which it's nobody else who's involved, right? Think of the ripple effects. Think of how it may be impacting others beyond myself, beyond my immediate circle. So inshallah, see you again tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.